fun. This class is, we've done a lot of stuff in this class, and now we've gotten to the point where you should be able to mock things up. You should be able to kind of jump into a thing like Figma or something like Sketch, and you should be able to mock things up. But we're starting to think about, like, what do I want to show people in my portfolio? And you probably have a website, or you probably have something interesting that you can put online. And I just wanted to kind of set one of these classes for talking about the next few years of technology. And you may or may not know, on Tuesday there's going to be an Apple event, and we're all really excited. We're going to see the next big thing. No. So on Tuesday, Apple is going to have a spring event. And again, we're expecting a lot of interesting gizmos coming out of it. A lot of people are talking about AR. Again, it's been several years since Pokemon Go, and we're all waiting for the next big hit. But Apple has been very chatty when it comes to AR. So again, we shall see if they ever release something like glasses, or if they do things like in the summer, they might update the AR kit, or the Google equivalent to AR, because I feel like there's been a lot of momentum on AR, and that would be really cool thing to put in your portfolio, to just kind of show that you're thinking about the future, or your head is up there. So yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about the portfolio. So as I said here, one of the tricks and one of the things that designers don't do is they don't talk about the KPI, or the efficiency of the design, or the outcome of the design. So if we were talking about a mock-up, that's great, but it's always great to talk about work that you have done, so that you can talk about the measurable KPI. So click-through rates, or sales, or whatever it is, downloads, something. Again, the missing piece for most designers is they can never really evaluate if their project was successful. Very often they sort of obsess over, was it beautiful? Was it trendy? And yeah, the KPI is the thing that's going to kind of get people to say, hey, wait, this was actually terrific design. All right, so let's jump in. So one of the ones that I want to mention is, if you like this stuff, if you want to give a facelift to your website, do check out Joe Natoli. I'm not paid by this. This is not a sponsor. He's a guy who puts out a lot of content. You'll find him on LinkedIn very easily. And he has courses for this, where you can kind of like go through and make your portfolio really sing. But think about it, make a note, just follow him on Twitter. He's full of ideas. He's been in the industry for 20 or 30 years. So really bright guy. All right, so let's jump in. So the first level of your website, if I was going to scroll through your website, is I'm probably going to expect to see a lot of PC and mobile device software, right? Apps and websites, as you'd expect. Now, a lot of people are coming through this class and they say, I've studied online, I did a course, I don't have any experience online. All right, fair enough. You could be a junior designer if you want. I got no problem there. All you got to do is just make sure that you treat those mock-ups with care. So what you want to do is you want to go on the App Store or the Play Store and just go scroll through the top 50 downloaded apps, right? The most popular 50 apps, and download a bunch of them. Download anything you think is interesting or something that you might use on a daily basis. Download it, use it, and start getting really anal, start getting really picky about, are there any problems with this app? Is there anything that bothers me about this app? One of the ones that I kind of got into recently was apps that would track my sleep, or apps that would kind of encourage me to sleep, or whatever, whatever they're doing, right? They're trying to measure the effectiveness of my sleep, or it's a sound thing that's kind of like, give you white noise, all these kind of apps. Really interesting. So use them all, and figure out if there's any that you could actually just kind of totally redesign. You could do wireframes, you can make a clickable prototype here, and you could actually present those, through video with, 5 or 10 users, and get new numbers on them. So these are all really good ideas, and all they're doing is they're really just showing the HR or the hiring manager, they're just showing like how much you respect the process, right? Hiring managers are not looking at your final outcomes. They're not looking at your beautiful gradients or anything like that. They're looking to see if you have the process down, right? So what was it like when you first evaluated the problem that you wanted to solve? What was it like when you first initiated the wireframes? How did you go from wireframes to then adding color or going to high fidelity? And then from high fidelity, adding those kind of like the clickable motions or animations. How did you test it? How did you respond after you got feedback from interviewing those 5 people, right? These are all like very important steps. And you got to kind of look at your work now and say like, oh, I got like one of those steps, but I need to have 5 of them. So this is already a terrific place to get started. Again, on the weekend, if you have time, maybe do it on Saturdays. But yeah, this is a great place to get started. The mobile phone is interesting, right? Because it's such a mature platform, and I always feel myself. I don't know. I almost feel myself getting kind of drawn away from the mobile phone. So these are mature services. We expect them to work fantastically well. So get really picky about the current top sellers. So here's an example of something you might do. You may as well take a screenshot of this. This is an example of what a wireframe might look like on my portfolio, right? Who was the client? What did I do? I did wireframes, I did interviews, I made a clickable prototype. When was it? You can say this project took me 6 weeks, or this project took me 3 years, or whatever it was, and the result. And this is such a great little snapshot of the entire project, right? This is the kind of thing that you want HR managers to kind of scroll through, read, and then decide if they want to click on it. And what I often see is when I look at designers, or if I just like work with them, I often see that the result is missing. And what that means is that you haven't had that conversation with the client where you get a measurable result at the end of a project, or maybe 6 months after the project. So maybe you should consider reaching out to some of your past clients and see if you can have a conversation with them about the results. What were the metrics that they were looking for? What happened? Is it something that you can kind of hang your hat on? Is it something you can brag about a little bit? And again, if you don't have a result, I'm actually wondering if you should be highlighting this in your portfolio. If you have a limited amount of work, that's great, no worries. But I would be promoting the ones that have this result, because this is the one that HR managers are really going to get interested in when that result really appeals to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's jump in a little bit to AI. And again, you're in an interesting place here as a designer. You can sort of imagine what the technology does. Well, I would say that you could do 2 things. One is you could imagine what the technology does, or 2, you could sit down with the developer and you could sort of like understand like what works and what doesn't work. Can we reorder content in this way, or can we not? So the first thing that comes to mind when I think about AI is just a shopping cart, right? So here is a Alibaba or like a Taobao website in China. You can see that the design is obviously very unique. But what's interesting about it is that Taobao is essentially like a hobby for many modern Chinese. They see clicking through Taobao as a fun little hobby. It's something interesting that they enjoy for maybe 30 minutes rather than, playing video games or something. They're just checking out Taobao and they're seeing what what do they want to buy next, that kind of thing. They've made it so addictive to use. Why? Because the AI is constantly recommending them very relevant content. So this is kind of the basic form of AI, right? Is recommendations based on history. So this is one of the one thing that you can kind of build in your app is recommendations to keep the user using the application. The other one I like to talk about is Starbucks. Many of you probably have the Starbucks app on your phone. A couple things that the Starbucks app is doing. Obviously, you have a relationship with Starbucks. It's kind of tracking all the things that you've bought in the past. And then in the future, it's going to give you recommendations based on what you bought. It's also going to give you suggestions for new things that they want you to check out. Maybe you like this because it's kind of like the other thing that you get every Wednesday. And the last thing that it does is it actually allows Starbucks to know where they should close and where they should open new stores. If you think about the crowdsourcing of thousands and thousands of users in the downtown core, you can imagine, oh, if I put a Starbucks right here, everybody would have, -5 minutes on their walk time. These kind of little things that we want to make everything closer and more convenient for the greater scale of users. So this is how they're using AI. And in this case, as a designer, I'd really like you to just really use your imagination and try to imagine, how can we use AI to help the users, obviously, and then also how can we use AI to build up the company's revenue streams or their income streams, right? This is really creative, really useful, really interesting, and you couldn't do it without AI, right? So very ingenious, and they do this all over the world. All right, and again, here's an example. This is a terrific example where you could use your imagination, right? Again, go back to that 50 top 50 downloads thing. Go back and start imagining how each company might use AI to retain usage of the customers, to build up income streams or revenue streams, or build up the engagement of user sort of cross-user interaction. So how can users interact with each other through the app, possibly using AI, or how can they just sort of better engage with the company, or how can you build up a kind of a long-standing relationship with the company? Maybe you had a history of their interactions, or if it's a game, then maybe you have a history of the way they play, or how often they play, or that kind of thing, right? So can you build up a relationship, and can you build up revenue streams using AI? Right, lots and lots and lots of people are doing it. So you got to ask yourself, what is in it for us? All right. As you said here, you know the drill. All right, the next one, and again, we're talking about future technology, and I say here, this isn't really future technology. We're already there, right? You said it's been 5 years, maybe 5 years plus, since Echo hit the market. So the story behind Echo, if you don't know, Echo was the result of Amazon's attempt to get into the mobile phone space. Originally, they had a phone called the Amazon Fire. Was it the Fire phone, something like that? And unfortunately, it didn't really land. It didn't really take off. So the phone was essentially disassembled. They pulled it from the market, but all of the other pieces that led to the phone, all the kind of operating system and all that thing, were kind of productized into their own little products. So Echo essentially became kind of like a little offshoot of that phone, and it's been very successful. So Echo is essentially a low-end speaker. Again, I don't have to explain it to you. You guys know. But Echo is essentially a low-end speaker, but the software underlying the Echo is very rich and very mature. So there are lots of interactions that other services and software have with the Echo, essentially so that you can talk to the Echo and tell them to subscribe to a podcast or buy something on Amazon, or maybe download this on the internet, or buy this on the internet, that kind of thing. So this is another way that you can maybe better interact with users, possibly when they're in the car, possibly when they're brushing their teeth, right? There's a lot of interesting sort of like corners of the day when people are able to talk, but they can't really interact. This is what Echo offers. And here's one of the biggest challenges. So if you see on the left, we have Amazon, then we have Google, Apple, and then finally Microsoft. All of these are very rich and they're very powerful. But I guess the question that I must ask myself is do you trust any of them, right? We sort of know how they make money, right? And we know that big data is extremely valuable to them. So that's what's in it for them, right? They're getting big data. I think Apple and Microsoft might have a little bit better relationship with the data. Google, we know that's sort of part of their advertising plan. And Amazon, we know that it sort of ties directly into their store. If you have an application and you want people to start talking to the application, can you build trust? It's a very interesting question, right? It kind of allows you to kind of frame the app in an interesting way and say, well, do people want to talk to us? Do people want to ask us questions? how do we plan to serve the customer using voice? We know what the worst case scenario is here, and it's probably a telephone tree. The telephone tree is unnatural. I want to get past it every time I see it. If that's the way you're going to treat people, then you may as well just have an email, right? Because I'm sending you an email. So voice has a very interesting role if your company can handle it, and if your company can afford to have all these hired people working, like listening and jumping on phone calls. So the possibilities are high, but you need to support them. Now, speaking of this, there's a fantastic book. Everybody who comes on these classes, I always love to say a book apart. I always recommend them. Why? Because I think the quality is very high. They're very affordable. These softcover books are usually about $9 or so. You can get the Kindle book similarly for about $9. I've read Conversational Design. I think it's fantastic. And not only does it touch on the conversational UI, or what we would consider as kind of speech interfaces, but it also allows you to consider how the words on your page sound. For example, there are a handful of companies that are really, really good at writing excellent. I don't even know how to explain it, right? It's the content of the writing sounds like a human being as opposed to a robot, right? That kind of human language. One of the ones that I really love is Basecamp. Basecamp, they seem to have a real care for the written word. And whenever you read what they write on their website, it always seems like a human being is speaking to you rather than a kind of like a lawyer or a robot or an engineer or something like that. So anyway, check it out if you want to build out these languages. Again, I don't know if it's going to dominate the future. I don't know if it's going to be incredibly popular, but it is convenient, right? And put it in this perspective. If it manages to save the user's time, then there's value, right? That's what it's doing. It's saving us time in its own little way. So fantastic. And of course, once you get into the world of Spotify and podcasts and music, music and those things are never ever going to go away, right? So there's always going to be a place for speech and audio and this kind of human interface. So here, can you share your mock-ups with interviewees and prove that people will use it? So this is more about the content of your writing, and also maybe interviewing people on just speech interfaces in general. Do they trust them? Do they enjoy them? Which companies do they trust? Which companies do they not trust? And what are the things that will cause somebody to lack trust or lose trust in a company? All right, useful computing with speech. Again, this is the future. I don't think it's going to dominate the future, but I think that there's always going to be a value in human interaction. And again, we look at places like Apple with Siri. They've been at it. They seem to have been at it for years and years, going all the way back to what was it, 2009 or something. And it's that we're still at this place where people don't really trust, or they don't really think that it works. There's a lot of these kind of like misunderstandings about speech. So we'll keep working on it. All right, so the next one in, I get a few more of these. What do we add here? Apps on the wrist. So this is another one, again, very successful market. We have Android, we have Apple. Obviously, we have all these little other smaller players like Fossil and so on that are doing very well. I guess the real question is, they're fantastic for health. And we're obviously seeing a lot of these kind of health companies like Peloton jump up, these kind of wearable technologies jump up. I guess the question is, are apps on the wrist a thing? And again, I said here, we've already sold 100 million Apple Watches. There is absolutely a market there. The question is apps on the wrist. So what you might consider is the kind of the length of time that somebody wants to spend interacting with their wrist. Are there apps that you can build where somebody is spending less than 10 seconds or less than 5 seconds interacting each time? For example, somebody going to the gym using it to kind of log their reps or their sets, that's fantastic. Can you build in automation wherever possible? For example, somebody doing like bicep curls or something like that. Can the wrist automatically detect it, and can you log things like weights? These are all kind of brilliant features that do matter. That's what people are doing. They're taking their Apple Watch, they're going to the gym, they're probably listening to Spotify through the watch. All you got to do is kind of plug these pieces together to automate things wherever possible. And that's where the designer comes in, right? This kind of creativity is extremely valuable. I'm just jumping back here for a second. All right, good. All right, just jump in here. So the next one here. So yeah, again, 100 million units. There's a tremendous market there. The real key is, can you automate it? As I said here, one of the things that Apple has been doing is, whenever possible, they've been trying to pull features or pull users away from the iPhone, which means, the exact same content, I'd rather do it on my wrist automated than manually do it on my phone, which takes up my energy, takes up my attention, and all the rest of it, right? So what you're really doing is you're designing automation. And again, if possible, sit down with a front-end developer or somebody who's really big into Apple or Google apps and talk to them. It's like, how would we do this? How would we automate this? And so on. All of this stuff can go into your mock-ups and into your portfolio. This is an example of the interactive or input features that Apple Watch presented in 2014. Woo, long time ago, right? Look at all the different interactions that they were offering, right? They were offering kind of this force touch. They had this taptic engine would kind of notify you. So for example, it would ring your phone in a gentle way that wasn't annoying. It would wake you up in bed, for example, at 6 a.m., but it wouldn't do it in a kind of irritating way. It would be a very, very gentle notification. Again, all these different interactions. So there's lots of different ways that you can interact with this device. The only question is, can you do it in a way that is helpful, that automates something that we currently physically do? And recently, it's always seemed to kind of fall into this kind of activity, or going to the gym or working out, which are, very valuable. But you just got to, you got to make that connection. So when in doubt, go out, reach out to your friends, ask them about the watches that they may have. Ask them if they haven't even bought a watch yet, and say, like, would you ever buy a watch that you had to plug in every, once a day? That kind of thing, right? Most people, they rely on their phone for the time, because it's super easy, right? It's right there. We got it. It's easy. So the real question is, getting somebody to buy it, and then, getting them to kind of like adopt apps. What does it take to make somebody a daily user? I want to go back to what I said before about the sleep, some of the sleep habits. I use an app. I'm just kind of looking at my phone right now. I use an app called Sleep Cycle. And what does it do? It measures my sleep. And obviously it wakes me up in the morning with a very gentle, very, very smooth, gentle sound, as opposed to a kind of like annoying alert. And it actually wakes me up at the time during my sleep when I can wake up in a relaxed way, rather than being kind of groggy when I wake up. That's what it's offering me, right? There's a lot of value there. They have a business, that people will pay a few dollars a month to do additional features and so on. So there's value there, as long as you can articulate it, and maybe sit down with the developer and say, like, can you do this on the watch? What would it take? That kind of thing. I can tell you, a lot of the time when you present mock-ups, or perhaps imaginary apps to people who are developers, people who are directors in these companies, they will just look at it and they'll say, that technology is impossible, or this technology is possible. So yeah, just have a conversation, and you'll get places. So as I just mentioned here, that it's getting more and more like the core functionality of these are related to the health, maybe health and fitness, and maybe even sleep and things like that. Whereas secondary functionality, I would say, as reviewing and inputting notes. Obviously, you can use your voice to do that. Controlling and reviewing your home. So we're going to get into sort of the computerization of the home in a bit, and generally getting away from your smartphone. So if you can take functionality that you do now on your phone and just move it over to the wrist, with automation, well, there you go. You've just saved the user a whole bunch of time. Now you've automated something that they used to manually do. Fantastic. Apps on the wrist, as I said here, you get the idea. You can go look at mock-ups. You can just, again, go to the App Store, see what are some of the most popular downloads, see if you can see some trends, download ones that are terrible, right? Download ones that are maybe not that great, and see if you can fix them in any way. As I said here, Google Forms, I haven't mentioned this in the past, but Google Forms is fantastic. If you can find a range of people, maybe you can find people on like userinterviews.com. You can pay people, like $20, $30, $40 to interview them for an hour, pick their brains, and you might even get their email address, and maybe you can send them a Google form, before the interview or something like that. So you can kind of get a profile of the way they use the watch. All right, this one is a quick one, and it's mostly because I'm not a homeowner. So if anybody on the call wants to speak up, this is great. The home is alive. This is a wonderful way to basically review the home, review anything that's electronic or anything that's connected to the web, and that is getting more and more common. So this is a trend that's gone back at least 3 or 4 years now, where more and more devices are released to the market, and they are called smart. So you would have a smart toaster, a smart fridge, right? A smart bed, and all these things. And all they're doing is they're essentially just tracking data and then sending it somewhere, right? So whether you're on Android or iOS, you should be able to kind of see where this data is going and see if it benefits you in any way. One of the biggest values here is your ability to just kind of drop in, just review the house, right? It's not something that takes you a lot of time, but if you can just check the house, see that all the doors are locked, see that nothing is accidentally turned on, and if something is on, you can turn it off from your phone. There's a lot of power and a lot of security and peace of mind there, which is really wonderful. As I said here, you have a $500,000 mortgage, so there's a lot of value in having that peace of mind. And this is just an example, as I said, of these smart devices. I pulled this from the Apple website, but you can imagine basically anything that's electronic, there are smart equivalents, what essentially means that you can track them using the home device or the home sort of core app. And again, even things that you wouldn't even expect, like a faucet or a thermostat or, windows. Wow. So yeah, just seeing that something is open or closed and being able to control it remotely is very powerful. And again, if you have any friends who are not just engineers, but on the physical side of kind of mechanical engineering, or they're very good at building and electronics and all that, they might be really interested in this kind of automated home space, which is really exciting. As I said, Designer Q, Apple and Google have their own central hub. So you can see here at the bottom, I believe this is the Apple. Oh, no, it's not true. It's not true. Apple and Google have their own central hub for tracking the home, but many of the devices themselves, or for example, this is the Hue Light brand. So you can actually create its own app for each individual set of devices. That's one thing that you can mock up if you'd like. You may design an alternate UI for your own app to manage the hardware device through a phone or tablet. So I know it seems like kind of a jumble of apps. So yes, you can control these things through the core app itself, but if for whatever reason the app that Apple or Google is providing is lacking features, you can create this yourself. So it's just an exercise as a designer to create something that is beautiful and also retains the brand of, say, Philips, or maybe a hardware maker like LG or Samsung or something like that. Very cool. Let's see. All right, and again, I don't know how many. I think I'm moving. I got autonomous cars, which is very exciting. And again, all of these things are doing is basically reminding HR managers and people who are hiring you that you're seeing the world. Your head isn't stuck in the sand or sitting down just like plugging away. That you're kind of seeing the world and you're imagining how software can improve the world. That's why we're doing this, right? It's really exciting. So thank you to Tesla. They're obviously a visionary company, and there are other autonomous cars out there. And so this market is really exciting. It's really, it's really amazing. So how does software affect what these cars do? Well, again, we have an interface. This interface is here, and it's mainly a touch screen, right? So Tesla is doing a lot of amazing things here. Obviously, you can see those gaming elements, but Tesla's UI itself is actually very beautiful. You can go on YouTube if you want. You can just see a like left to right, top to bottom walkthrough of Tesla's UX on the latest cars and see like what are they planning, what does the interface look like, what do the components look like, and I'm sure you could find places online where you can download all the components into a Figma or Sketch file and allow you to essentially create new components based on that design system. So very exciting stuff. And again, this is a growing market. This is going to be the majority of cars one day, hopefully it happens soon, right? Because these guys are essentially saving the environment in their own way, right? We want everybody to be driving cars that are hopefully good for the environment or protective in some way. So well done. Let's talk a little bit about the features, right? So this is one of the things that I've heard, and it's a very exciting question, one that goes back decades, right? Is that cars were always built the same way, right? You had the driver on one side, the passenger on the other side, and maybe more passengers in the back. And if the car is driving itself, well, then the driver doesn't have to face forward. So an interesting example that you might mock up is what would a car look like and what would a car do if all of the seats were facing each other? So it was almost like a living room that was on wheels, right? And this is a very interesting way to think about an individual who maybe they're taking the subway or maybe they're individually driving to work. Maybe their work day actually starts when they get in the car. And again, you don't have to do this, right? Maybe you want to take a break, or maybe you're just relaxing in the car. I don't know. What do you want to do? There's so many things you can do. It doesn't necessarily have to be driving, right? So there's a lot of incredible things you can do in the next few years. One of the things I want to mention here is presenting this to, I'm trying to think of a company that isn't interested in cars, and there's so many that are, but if you were presenting this to LG or Samsung, you might say, hey, here's what cars look like, and Samsung would kind of look at you sideways and say, we don't make any cars, right? This is for when you want to apply to a company like like Tesla, for example, right? Is to show them that you understand their components, you understand their system, and you yourself have a interesting vision for what the future of cars is going to be. And again, they're not expecting you to have full information. If you're outside the company, that's fine, right? But they're looking at your process and they're looking at your imagination. You're working through all these ideas. You're failing and you're kind of talking to users and you're getting, you're iterating. All of these things are exactly what HR managers are looking for, and it's exciting when they get it. Very exciting. And again, I see this as being a little bit dated, but not so much. The Apple car is still a rumor. We've heard lots of good things about it. We'll see. Maybe next year, maybe in 2 years. I don't know. Eventually, it's got to arrive, right? But honestly, Tesla by themselves have done beautiful work, and we're just blessed to have these things in the market. At least they're pushing all of these cars, right? The Japanese cars, the local cars, they're all kind of driven by this push to, I don't know, to save the environment, but also to modernize and also to change cars in general, right? So that drivers don't have to stress out when they're driving. They can just chill out in the car and car drives on the highway itself. So exciting stuff. As I said, there are lots of different things you could possibly do in the car. You can imagine what commuting will look like in 5 years or 10 years. So have fun with this. This is something that you should be bragging, when you do a job interview. It should be exciting for you to show off this amazing work. Okay, augmented reality. And I sort of pushed all this stuff to the end of the presentation or the end of the lecture or the class or whatever, because I think that virtual reality is the one that seems to be the furthest out. Augmented reality, obviously, we have that. We've had Pokemon Go, and they are popular. But I guess the real question is, where else am I going to use this? I've heard of people using Pokemon. I've heard of people using augmented reality when they play sports. They're snowboarding, they're skiing, or maybe they're playing football, and maybe they're like the quarterback is reading its plays, and it's got like a digital screen. I mean, there are ideas out there, but the question is, are they mainstream? Are they going to be real? So these are all really interesting ideas. And part of your work as a designer is not just to have an imagination, but to do a little bit of work on the ground, talking to people, right? If we were talking about football, who can you talk to who's interested in technology and has a role in the NFL or has a role in professional sports who can comment on this, right? I mean, that's the real question. That's part of the research that you need to do to validate these ideas. Again, I'm talking about AR here, and again, these are rumors. You can go on to The Verge, and you can see them. It seems like every week we have another announcement about rumors or possible glasses or eye contact lenses. Who knows? Facebook, of course, we know they are very active. They have a tremendous product on the market called Quest. They're very busy, right? So they're sort of blazing a new trail, and it still feels like we're in the early days, right? We don't have 100 million sellers. Games don't necessarily sell that well, but it's the early days of this kind of mixed reality. I know people who work at places like Microsoft who that's their whole job is mixed reality, right? They're kind of bouncing back and forth between virtual reality and augmented reality, and they're trying to make it real. But again, it's a few years away. This is a fantastic use of your time. If you already have tremendous portfolio items now, I would highly recommend you jump into something like AR. This is called Aero, done by Adobe. You can find it on any tablet. You can actually use it directly on the tablet and build interesting experiences on the tablet. And again, it's imagine if you were walking around Imagine if you're walking around a museum, right? And you could hold up your glasses or you could hold up your phone and you get additional details. This is just one thing that is very obvious, right? These are essentially pop-ups that are augmented. What else could you imagine, right? How else might we use computing to enhance, to augment the real world, right? Very interesting. And again, the more you talk to people, the better you can kind of flex your imagination. As I said here, this is a tremendous product. I've used it, I've enjoyed it. You can import images, you can have pop-ups, maybe just getting to understand how they program in Aero is it's a tremendous value to you. All right, you can do demos very quickly within 30 or 40 minutes. You can have a little demo. It's fantastic. So spend a few weeks playing with AR. I think this is going to be a bright spot in the future. I don't know about VR because it's asking a lot of users, but AR, it just relies on having a smartphone, right? So billions of people could be using your app. Let's see. So here, the pitch. Again here, once you have this down, you can flesh out how UI would appear. So yeah, once you actually get the business pitch as to why somebody would use AR, then you can actually go back and work on the UI and the interface and so on. And the last one here is called virtual reality, right? So again, we sort of focus on games because we kind of imagine as a digital place where you can be there in first person. So gaming comes up, and obviously that's what Facebook is spending a lot of time on. But there are other things that we can do, right? So yeah, this is Oculus Quest, one of their newest versions. And what does he here? So Oculus App Lab, you can basically access new versions of games. That's exciting. And I think I actually have a little link here. Where is it? Yeah. So do you guys just let me know? Okay, I'm gonna put this on for a bit. And I think just let me know if you can hear the sound. The visualization itself is fine. So what this is a guy doing a demonstration of a game related to climbing. And so it's actually very relevant. I chose this because I thought this is actually simulating what it's like to climb. And I think it's giving you a really exciting experience as opposed to just an imaginary world or something like this. This actually might feel a little bit like climbing. So I'm going to play this. Apologies if the sound isn't working. I heard that some people had difficulty with the audio, but just getting the visual experience is enough. So let's check it out. All right, let's jump in here. Just for a minute, I'm just going to look at this. Again, very exciting stuff. I just have to say that gaming is a huge market. I mean, obviously, anybody who's been around knows that COVID had caused people, to be stuck indoors. Gaming has been one of the things that people have really loved doing. I mean, there really is no end in sight for gaming. Surely, the question is whether VR will or will not be a significant part of the gaming industry. But I mean, we're already talking about billions anyway. So it's really just, the sky's the limit here. These things are going to get more affordable and technology is going to get better. So I'm just going to point something out because if you guys want, you can hear a little bit about the interaction. If you guys look at the hand, you'll see there's actually like a stamina bar here. And so if I hold too long with one hand, my stamina bar will run out. And I suppose I could possibly fall from this climb. So there are sort of a few UI elements in here, but the game itself, is a UX experiment more than a UI experiment, because after all, you don't want to spend a lot of time looking at UI elements. You want to sort of be native in the world. So it's very interesting. Right on. All right, let's get out of here. So again, check this out if you're interested in it. Obviously, there's a whole world available to you. And as I said, not into video games, that's okay. There's more. There's more to it than just video games. We can talk about the military, right? We can imagine why you would want to train in VR and not in real life. It saves a tremendous amount of money, right? Obviously, when you're talking about human beings, you're not going to be training with real people and hurting them, but you can do that in VR. Number two, in sport, we talked about how you might, as a fan, experience sports, or as a player, you might use sports. Mental health, this is one actually where we talk about sort of people who need therapy, and they want to kind of experience a kind of a warm state or a relaxed state. This is a very interesting way of using technology. And as we said here, medical training. So maybe jumping, diving, dodging, running, and so forth with VR. It can be very exhausting, so it's good for training. And the last one is education. You can actually have video chats with people around the world. And if everybody has these glasses on, well, there you go. You're a virtual teacher, and it feels real for the student. It doesn't feel like staring at the wall. As I said here, these things are obviously on the market. I don't know, they're expensive, but the price is going to come down every 6 months. So I think these things are going to be very special. And one day these things are just essentially going to be glasses that you put on your head, like that. You can walk down the street with these glasses, and you can have an AR experience, and maybe you could tap the button and you can have a VR experience. So it's just a matter of time before these things are glasses. Again, very cool thing. If you guys are interested in the digital space and you want to learn more about this, maybe take a screenshot of this. You can find this online, Designing Screen Interfaces for VR. It is about 4 years old now, but still very interesting. And they talk about how they measure space in a virtual world. This is obviously a guy from Google, and he was talking about sort of the units that they use for UI. So you can actually get into some user interface stuff from the early days. Now he is actually hired and he's now working at Apple. So I keep thinking that one of these days we're going to get these glasses from Apple, but we'll see. Anyway, check it out. It's an interesting video. So yeah, here's what I would say. You're going to have a whole bunch of opportunities to flesh out your beautiful portfolio with these virtual examples. And I say it just shows that you really respect and you care about the industry. Your head is up. You see what's around you, rather than just kind of putting it down and kind of being buried in your digital work. And the fact that you can actually talk about things that you measure, the fact that you can talk about what users say when you chat them up, when you interview them, means that you're ready to be a pro UX designer. So as long as you have those numbers, I think people are really going to enjoy hearing the story behind some of your work. So right on. As I said here, if you can add a solid mock-up based on research in the next 30 days, you will have a top secret future project. So as I always say, this is a kind of a top secret thing because it is using your imagination. You may be creating this from the real world, but it's just kind of like this golden ticket where you can excite the HR manager as opposed to showing them yet another e-commerce website. We've all seen those a billion times over, but an exciting piece in your portfolio that will really get them excited in your interview is really compelling. So enjoy your interview, enjoy talking about it, and I'm sure the clients will love to hear more about it. So if you have any questions, comments, that's wonderful. I am on LinkedIn. If you guys want to add me, if you want to add me, that's really just because very often I will actually retweet job opportunities and things like that. So it would be nice to keep in touch. But otherwise, I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend. If you're interested, I will be back next Sunday, and we're going to talk a little bit more about finding clients. So what you can do to reach out in the digital space, often through social media, to find clients and to kind of get your name out there. All right. Well done. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Marlon. Take it easy, man. Send me a message. Yeah, right on. Send me a message in the next couple of days. Again, if you have anything that you're interested in doing, some of this futuristic stuff is kind of out there. But as a designer, you can kind of, you're only limited by your imagination, right? You can make lots of crazy stuff. And if you have any developers or front-end developers in your life, you can bounce ideas off them and say like, how would you build this? Or what would this take? Or what's the missing piece? These are all really cool projects that would excite people in interview, rather than, I swear, again, my old job, I used to hire designers all the time. And I can tell you that looking at an e-commerce website is pretty boring at this point, right? It looks like WordPress, right? You look at it and we're like, yeah, what do you think? Is it WordPress or is it Squarespace? And then, because that's WordPress. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, there's not a lot of work, So yeah, the real work is actually people, as dorky as it sounds, because everybody's, these are all really tech obsessed people, but the hardest work is actually reaching out to something like userinterviews.com or some such competitor, so you can interview people and then take that and to kind of drag it into the project. Yeah, the more you do that, and the more you show maybe clickable wireframes that a user can actually click around and try, and maybe they can give you some notes. That's awesome, right? That's the stuff that we really want to do. Whereas, as you said, the e-commerce site, we've seen that a billion times. It doesn't take a lot of effort to build that kind of thing. So
gotcha.
Yeah, right on, buddy.
All right.
Keep in touch, and I'd love to see or hear any of your ideas for future portfolios. That'd be really interesting to look at.
I will. Thank you, sir. Excellent presentation.
Hey, great talking to you, man.
All
Have a good
right.
time, buddy. Take it
You
easy
have a
and
good
be
evening.
safe.
All right. You do the same.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.